Welcome to Safest Truck. Safest Truck is powered by LogRock, the only digital tool built exclusively to help America's trucking companies stay compliant and stand strong when the DOT or lawsuits come knocking at your door.
All right, so this week we have with us a trucking community celebrity, John Seidl, who we first got to know through the excellent content that he has at truckingwins.com. And we are excited to have John with us here today, not just because of his broader expertise and experience in the industry, but because he, in a past life, was an inspector. Do I have that right, John, for the Department of Transportation?
Yeah, it depends how you play it out. I was an inspector when I pulled trucks over at scales in the road, but then I was an investigator with FMCSA. That's when I came and knocked on company doors. So they both start with an I guess, and they both do the same thing.
And we're going to ask John to put back on his federal hat and help us understand, to get inside the mechanics, the mentality, the details of what is happening on the other side of the table when the DOT comes knocking on your door. And I think maybe the interesting thing to start is, how do you pick which door to knock on in the first place?
4 ways. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 basic ways that'll get them to knock on your door. 1, CSA scores. You don't want high CSA scores. The worse your CSA scores are, the more likely they're going to come knock on your door. 2, high profile crash that hits the media and gets the attention of the feds. Does that mean all fatalities? Nah. It just means some of them could result in a review. 3rd, complaint. Not just a frivolous complaint, a documented complaint with real tangible things they're accusing you of, whether it's a driver, ex-employee, another trucking company, etc. And the last thing is, it's called the PSP, Driver Information Resource. Most people don't know what that is. When drivers get pulled over, all the violations they have are connected to their driver's license. So then the feds track down and find out who's the worst driver in the whole United States. And they find out where they were inspected last. And they target that driver by going to the company that honestly was dumb enough to hire him. So there are 4 ways it'll get you knocked on the door. You don't do those things, the likelihood of getting a visit are next to none. Interesting.
Which of those would you say is the most common? What's the one that's causing the most doors to get knocked on?
CSA scores, CSA scores, CSA scores.
A company's CSA scores have got them onto your radar, and you've made the decision, or your boss at the FMCSA, somebody's made the decision that that's it, we're sending in John. So you go knocking on that door. What are you going to do to prepare for that visit? Or do you show up and it's a blank slate from when you enter the building?
Well, back in the old days, every review was a full review. They checked everything from drug testing to CDLs to DQ files to hours service to maintenance to hazmat. Whatever you did, they're looking at everything. Several years ago, right in the middle of my career with FMCSA, they came out with focused reviews, right? So first they're going to decide, do you have enough alerts to warrant a full review, CSA score alerts? Or do you just have 1 or 2 or maybe 3, and they're just going to focus on those areas where you're non-compliant? Say hours of service. You got a CSA alert and hours of service. They may come in and just look at your hours of service, not really look at drug testing, not look at a whole hazmat investigation, or even maintenance for that matter.
What were you sitting there thinking, man, if the trucking company owner just knew this, right? Or if these guys had just thought about this, are there, I don't want to say hacks, but are there smart approaches, tactics that folks can be deploying to put themselves in a better position?
Companies should want to do everything right. Would you agree with me? Right?
100%,
everything
100%.
right. But if you have a limited amount of resources, you're falling behind, work is getting on the back burner. Maybe you lost a safety person. Focus on those acute and criticals. And a perfect example is a driver qualification file, right? You should have everything in a DQ file. You should have a program where it outlines and tracks to make sure you're not missing nothing. Because if you get sued, you can get in trouble. But as it relates to a knock on the door from the feds, as long as you have a file of some sort, even if you're missing some things, you got a current medical and you ran an MVR within 30 days of hire, those are the things that are acute and critical. Wait a minute, John. I have to fill out an application for my drivers, don't I? Yes. But let's say you had none, not one application. Are you in violation? Yes. Is it acute and critical? No. What I'm saying is if you're going to mess anything up in a DQ file, don't have it be the MVR within 30 days of hire. Don't have it be a medical card, and make sure you ain't running around with a guy that has nothing.
I remember from one of our past conversations that you said that there's some smart moves that folks can be doing to make sure that their company is being put in the right bucket in terms of the number of miles that they're driving. Did I understand that right?
Accidents per million miles driven. So 1.5 is the magic number. You cannot have more than 1.5 DOT recordable crashes per a million miles driven in the last 365 days. So if you had 4 crashes in 4 million miles, it's clearly 1, right? But if you had 4 crashes and 2 million miles, that's 2. Well, that's too high. So when you're doing a review, you need to figure out, okay, how many miles did I have in the last 365 days? How many crashes do I have? You can figure this out before they ever come. And if they do call you, you can figure it out in 5 minutes to see if you're going to fail in that formula. Problem is being an insurance guy at Reliance Partners, right? When we do submissions, we ask for the last 4 quarters IFTAs. Well, when you do a review with the feds, don't give them the last 4 quarters IFTAs. Give them the last 365 days of mileage from your ELD, or it's possible you just drove a bad rating because you simply gave them the wrong amount of miles.
More miles, more miles, more miles. You got to count every mile you got. How much should I be spending on safety and compliance? How do I know if I'm throwing good money after bad? I want to be safe. I want to be compliant. I want to reduce my risk with the DOT. I want to reduce my risk of, an ambulance chasing lawyer coming after me and trying to sue me. If you were a fleet owner, how do you think people should be thinking about that?
I would analyze your current company position. Let's look at all your current CSA scores and see where they're trending. If they're good and trending well, then you're at a good position as it relates to controlling those. Now let's look at your losses. How often do you crash? Are we educating drivers? Are we doing a good orientation to reduce the crashes? If your loss ratio is low, your CSA scores are in great shape. Those are 2 major areas that cost a lot of money. Now do a mock review because your CSA scores are good. You're not getting a lot of losses. You might not have the fatality, but anybody complain against you, right? So if you do get a complaint and they come in, are you going to have a restless night's sleep where you sweat all night? Or are you going to sleep like a baby? If you have made sure you're going to sleep like a baby for a review, your CSA scores are good, you're controlling losses, and you're paying drivers well so you can recruit the best ones, then you're spending the right amount for safety.
Yet another nugget of wisdom from the great John Seidl, who joins us representing Reliance Partners. John, we really appreciate you hopping on with us here today, as always.